Call the board meeting together. Order, first pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Shamrock, second.
No, I have a question. I'd like to pull the committee assignments and dates from the agenda.
Right now, somebody made a motion. We're looking for a second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Bird. Discussion.
I'd like to pull committee assignments 3.5.
Pull 3.5, yep. And where do you want to put 3.5?
I'd like to table it till the next meeting. I don't know who's on there for the assignments. I don't know how that's been. And I would like to have everybody have a look at that before we make a determination. Or at least have a chair look at it, our new chair look at it. Before making that determination.
Discussion?
So maybe table it for the next meeting.
Mr. Shamrock?
Well, I think we can still just look at it and just discuss it, and we don't have to make decisions on it, but at least if it's on there, we can discuss it and talk about it. We don't have to just make a final determination.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right,
I
so
don't want to make a determination because there's nothing on there.
Right, so I'm just saying we can leave it on the agenda, just not make a decision on
Okay, so we're not gonna approve, we're not gonna approve it as it's.
Or when we get to that part on the agenda, then we could table it. If that's what the board decides to do, or vote on it, or, whatever it is that the board decides.
Any other discussion on the agenda of adoption? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No,
Can the record note that 6 were in favor, 1 was opposed? Next item on the agenda is school board organization. The first item is new school board member oath of office. But all the new board members come to the center and will do your oath of office. And if any of the current board members would like to reaffirm their oath of office, you'd also want to step up to the front. Yeah, just right in front of the owl, or maybe facing the owl. Otherwise, they're back. Yeah, that's good. Facing the owl.
This is the owl, by the way. It's what records everything and live streams.
So I'm gonna read the beginning of it, and then I'll have you repeat after me once we get to the acts.
We're all going together.
Yes. So it is an honor that you were elected to guide the education of our community's children. As you recite the oath of office, you assume a tremendous responsibility as a director of our school district, with the duties empowered by the Minnesota legislature. This power puts you and other members of our school board in the position of being both morally and legally responsible for equitable, quality education of every student in this district. In carrying out this responsibility, you will be asked to fulfill the roles of the vision, structure, accountability, and advocacy. In providing the vision, the board with extensive participation of the community, envisions the community's educational future, then formulates the goals, defines the outcomes, and sets the course for the public schools. To achieve the vision, the board establishes a structure and creates an environment designed to ensure all students the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. Because as a board, we must be accountable to the community, we must ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children. As board members, we serve as education's key advocates on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision for our schools. Furthermore, we must strive to work together with the superintendent and staff to lead the district toward fulfilling the vision we have created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills and knowledge, citizenship, and personal development. So, repeat after me. Having signed the acceptance of the office and oath of office, I hereby publicly affirm my commitment to the oath of office. I swear that I will support the Constitution
I swear that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state,
and I will discharge faithfully the duties of the office of school board,
the duties of the office of school board,
member of Independent School District number 15,
school district number 15,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
I know. So the next item on the agenda is election of school board officers.
If I could jump in, we've done it different ways as far as after the chair is elected or selected. And we think it's probably best if everyone just stays where they are. And then Vanessa will take the gavel over to whoever is selected. And then the chair will run the meeting after that. So at the next board meeting though, we'll reshuffle where everyone sits depending on who the chair, vice chair, clerk, and treasurer are. Another thing I'll just point out is that whoever, and this is true for each one of the offices, is that the winning candidate needs to have a majority of the quorum present in order to get elected. So if there were 3 people vying for the chair, for example, and it was a 3-2-2 vote, that chair is not selected, even if the person has 3 votes, because that person needs a majority of the quorum. We have 7 people, so that person would need 4 votes in order to become the chair. Jill Anderson will remain the chair or acting chair until the chair is selected, and then we'll have the chair take over from there.
So seeking nominations for chair. Are there any nominations for chair?
I'd like to nominate Annette West for chair.
nomination of Annette West. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Hanson. Is there any other nominations? Mr. Humphrey,
I'd like to nominate Mr. Burke.
or any seconds on that? Oh, we don't have.
I was gonna say, I'll second it, but I don't know that we need it.
Okay. So we have two nominations, Mr. Burr and Ms. West. Are there any other nominations? Seeing no other nominations, would the board prefer to do a roll vote, or would you prefer to do silent ballots?
Yeah, we could do a show of hands, but we need to know who votes for whom, so we'll put that on the record.
Mr. Humphrey?
Is there a discussion before this?
Yes.
Okay.
So Ms. West, you were nominated first. Would you like to speak?
No, okay.
Mr. Burr?
No, I have nothing to say.
Okay, all in favor of Ms. West, please raise your hand.
I thought there was a discussion. That's what I was asking.
Oh, discussion, okay. Do you,
Yes.
okay, go ahead, Mr. Humphrey.
Great. So, I choose to support Nate. He asked me, for his support, and my concerns, not over him, but over our board chair, to be the person on this board who our bosses, our constituents, have valid concerns, but that we have fair access to the meeting agenda and committee assignments. I think that's a great pull value in that, so we can evaluate where we would best utilize our talents. But I would demand that the board, whoever gets elected, would grant fair access to the meeting agenda and committee assignments. Recognize that the school board determines the agenda for our one employee, the superintendent, who will follow and fulfill those agenda items, and our vote in that direction. And then I would just ask that this new board chair support the effort that once a decision is made, board members support that decision, as it says in the handbook of the description of the board chair.
Any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, all in favor of Ms. West, please raise your hand. 3 votes. All in favor of Mr. Burr? 4 votes. Congratulations, Mr. Burr.
I'd like to start by saying thank you for your support and the vote to be the board chair. I'm excited to work collaboratively with all of you to continue to advance this district for our students, our staff, and our community. We each represent part of our community and must remember that our decisions should reflect that as we work toward policy and governance that is inclusive of that representation. I'm confident we will have an effective and efficient board meetings and will operate as a team with one common goal to fulfill the mission of this district. As we move forward on agenda items, I will ensure each member has an opportunity to provide comments. I ask that you respect our fellow board members and not interrupt them while they are speaking. I also ask that we, as much as possible, try to stick to the general rules of debate. Share your support or opposition of a topic. You will be provided an opportunity to rebut any comment that comes from other members, as well as be able to summarize our opinions. With that, let's continue through the agenda and the rest of this meeting. At this time, I call for nominations for vice chair. Mr. Humphrey?
I'm missing that rest.
Mr. Shawrock?
Ms. Anderson?
Any other nominations? Okay. Is there a motion to close nominations? Mr. Humphrey? Is there a second? Mr. Workman? All in favor of the motion to close nominations, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Is unanimous? Motion passes with a vote of 7-0. All right, all in support of Board Member West for Vice Chair, signal.
Did anybody want to talk?
Yes. Any discussion on the, we already voted, but let's do the discussion. If there's any discussion. Any discussion?
Ready to speak on, yeah, the position we were nominated for?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for the nomination, Rob. Over the course of my tenure on the board, I've served in many roles, including chair and vice chair. I have knowledge, skills, and ability to fill in as the chair when he is not in attendance. In my past as board chair, I've led the board through turbulent times, ensuring all members were engaged and we worked as a team. As vice chair, I will continue to do the same. I'm well versed in Robert's Rules of Order and Minnesota statutes governing the school board. Lastly, the school board is a non-partisan position. This isn't about politics, it's about qualifications and experience to lead our board. I really hope you look at my experience, not vote based on your political beliefs.
Any other discussion?
I would appreciate the support of my fellow board, and for 2 years, I feel like, it would be, I would serve this position well. Thank you for your support.
Any other discussion? We are ready for the vote, so we're good there. All right, all in support of, we'll start with the first nomination of Board Member West for Vice Chair, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we can do the vote, but all in support of Board Member Anderson for Vice Chair, signify by saying aye. Aye. Or raise your hand, thank you. All right, we have 4 votes for Member West and 3 votes for Member Anderson. Per the pleasure of the board, Member West is now the Vice Chair. Congratulations. At this time, I call for nominations for clerk. Mr. Humphrey.
Yes, Anson.
Any other nominations for clerk? Okay. Is there a motion to close nominations or do a unanimous ballot be cast?
I'd like to close the ballot and we'll let you put it on.
Acclamation.
Unanimous ballot? Okay. Is there a second?
I'm sorry.
Any discussion? No discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion to close for unanimous ballot for clerk, Member Anson, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, signify by saying nay. Passes 7-0. Thank you. For the pleasure of the board, Member Hanson is now the clerk. Congratulations. At this time, I call for nominations for treasurer. Ms. Anderson?
Nominate Mr. Schulman.
Nominate Mr. Working.
Any other nominations? Is there a motion to close nominations?
So
Is there a second? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion on the floor with the 2 nominations of Schoenrock and Working, signify by saying aye. All those opposed, signify by saying nay. Okay, motion passes with a vote of 7-0. All in support of Board Member Schoenrock for Treasurer, signify by saying aye and raising your hand. All in support of Board Member Working for Treasurer, signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
we go to get 6, yeah.
So it was Andrea, Jake, and then Jay.
Correct. For the pleasure of the board, member working is now treasurer. Congratulations. All right, moving on, agenda item 3.3, school board member compensation. Per state statute, we will approve our compensation levels for the next year. In the board packet, you will see the rates for the last 5 years. As you can see, there was a 2% increase from 2022 and 2023 rates. We will need a motion or multiple motions to cover the annual compensation rates, the negotiation meeting rate, as well as the mileage reimbursement. Are there any questions prior to a motion being made? Okay, is there a call to motion for school board member compensation?
Make a motion that it remains the same as 2024.
Just for a point of clarification, would that be for all of the items?
For all of them.
So yeah, that would cover, that motion would cover the annual compensation rate, the negotiation meeting rates, as well as the mileage reimbursement.
For director, board chair, negotiating meetings, negotiating meeting exceeding 4 hours, school board member compensation, and then what you just listed. Yeah.
Is there a second? Mr. Worthing? Second. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, so I said this before and I will say it again. I don't believe in paid political office. I would say, I don't know if it's a different motion or is a comment on this motion that I would like to see the school board compensation be 0 and that money be funneled back to where it's needed most, perhaps bus drivers, perhaps whatever. The argument that people say is we do so much work and it's for so little money, comes out to like $5 an hour or something like this, and I'm saying all the more reason why you should be able to be doing it for free, because that's food work for $5 an hour. And I just think the optics of a politician getting paid are bad, especially when some employee groups are feeling undercompensated and or we give ourselves a raise, or people are giving themselves a raise. So that's my own personal stance. I don't hold anyone else to any lesser liking, but in my personal opinion, I don't think the school board should be a paid position.
Any other discussion? Okay, the current motion on the floor is to remain at the rates for annual compensation, negotiation meeting rates, as well as mileage as the 2024. That is in the board packet. The exact numbers are in there. That is the motion on the floor. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Nay. Motion passes 6-1. All right, moving forward, agenda item 3.4, school board meeting dates. Per Minnesota State statute, we must give proper notice to the public on our regular special emergency meetings. In the board packet, you will see a list of planned regular meetings as well as a list from MSBA of dates with restrictions for meetings. Are there any questions prior to a motion being made?
If I could make a quick comment, there are 3 months with only one board meeting, December, and then March because of spring break, and July. We also suggest listing each one as a regular meeting, and then if we decide to convert it to a workshop, we can always do that at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is there a call to motion for the 2025 school board meeting schedule?
So,
Ms. Anderson?
So,
Is there a second? Is there any discussion on the motion?
I have a question.
Ms. West?
We are not recognizing Indigenous Peoples' Day, is that correct?
Let's see.
It's not October 13th.
Oh, yeah, it's not, the state doesn't classify it the same as some of the other holidays, so that's why it's following this. Is that right? Or is it?
No, I think as long as we are having school and the district is open, you can have a meeting. If we were to shut down school and not, the district would be closed.
Yeah, thank you for that question.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to accept the 2025 school board meeting schedule as published in our board book, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed to the motion signify by saying nay. The motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Next agenda item, 3.5, school board committee assignments and dates. As you can see on the document in the board book, there are 18 committees or liaison assignments for us as school board members. What I'm asking for tonight as the chair is approval of those 18 positions. And within the next week, I will work with each of you on your preference and availability to fill each of those roles. Between now and when I speak to you, please have an idea of what you would like. You can see there are some time commitments to most of these committees, and we want to ensure max participation on those committees. Are there any questions prior to a motion being made? Ms. Anderson?
Do we need to approve meeting dates, so they're approved meeting dates? This evening, because otherwise if we do not approve them, we'll have meeting dates that go past or before our next meeting. So.
Yes, so any school board, any of these 18 committees are a public meeting because of school board members' participation. Therefore, they have to be approved dates with proper notification to the public. And I'll give you the head nod from Mr. Nelson as well.
So I would suggest that we approve the meeting dates and continue forward with the rest of it, and at least those meeting dates approved this evening.
Any other questions before a motion? Mr. Shawn?
I wonder about meeting to confer if we can add one more school board member to that committee. There's one on the current.
Ms. Anderson?
As the representative on the confer, there's 3 meetings a year typically. I don't know, 2 board members are down or not.
Mr. Anderson, is there any historical information as to why we have one on that committee?
As far as I know, there's no contractual obligation or policy that would say how many members. There's some advantages to having a second member just because then we have multiple perspectives that can be shared or provided. But really it's up to the board to decide, if you want 1, 2, or 3 members on the committee.
Ms. West?
You had mentioned taking 1 week to look over the list. Is it possible that we stretch that over 2 weeks because our next meeting isn't until further down the road here?
27th,
yeah. We do a 2 week committees.
Yeah, I have no issue with that. We would have it lined up before that next meeting, so each of us would know what committee we are on. No problem with that.
Just to make a point, to 2 weeks to go over, they put us the 20th as a holiday for staff. And then we would have that all put together by the 23rd, so to be able to give the staff enough time to have it on the agenda. So 2 weeks doesn't get a lot of time for staff.
There are some committees that are meeting before 2 weeks. For example, the Early Childhood Family Education Advisory is meeting on the 9th. So one possibility, I'm just throwing it out there, it's 1 or 2 weeks, doesn't matter to me, but if Nate could at least determine those really early meeting date committees and get that established, so at least we don't disrupt the flow.
Mr. Humphrey?
Is that the only one that's earlier this 2 weeks?
I'm looking through here real quick.
It's on the 21st.
Yeah, the one right below it, the Insurance Advisory Committee is on the 21st. And I think, oh, thank you. Yeah, Community Advisory Committee is on the 16th, so I'm sorry to forget.
Are those with members that are currently sitting or have they? Thank you, I don't have access to a computer yet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, community education is on the 16th, and I'm on that one.
And Nate's on the.
On the other two, yeah.
On the other two, could we interim that just for the, would you guys be willing to do that? And I'd also like to say, I think that's a great question, we'll push it out from that so we can better find out what we'd like and where we'd be best utilized. And I really appreciate you taking that into consideration. I think we'll have a way more effective presence on these committees if it's something that we know more about or are passionate about or have time for or can show up to, and obviously all those things.
Yeah, so really, kind of your suggestion is to at least have those 3 committees with like interim assignments. They're existing board members, so it makes sense to have them continue and then we can review it at the next board.
Just a thought.
If I could jump in too, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. When Brandon and I met to discuss the committees, we were really looking at things that were required and not required, but it's up to the board to decide. So we did suggest not having the facilities committee because it's not required anywhere. And then we also have the activities advisory committee that we can eliminate as well. Just as a reminder, we have the Schedule C and D committee, which is very similar to that, and there's been some confusion about which committee does what work. And so I don't think eliminating the activities advisory is necessarily an issue. But the facilities committee has been active for multiple years. And then Rob has his hand up.
I guess that ties into what I was going to bring up. I know we've talked about getting rid of the activities advisory committee because it kind of correlates with Schedule C and D, but there isn't that much. There's a Schedule C and D, it just says chair on it. I don't think we can add another one to that group as well, or we're fine with the way it is. And then the facilities committee, I guess that one, isn't needed, but this is just news to me.
Yeah, and it's been a good committee. So again, Brandon and I just looked at the lens as what's required, like by contract or by state law or something like that. So that's why we put that out there. But again, it's up to the board to decide. We're not opposed to keeping them.
Yeah, I don't know, I thought the facilities committee did some good work,
Yeah, there's no
but
doubt.
you probably know better how much need there is for it, but.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, Brandon, but I think it was established when the building referendum was first passed, because there were so many big decisions occurring during that time. Of course, almost all the money has been spent now. So sometimes the facilities committee talks about other facilities related issues.
Right.
So there is a value to it. It's just a different value than it was when it originated.
Correct.
So what does that committee do?
Maybe,
You've been on
Yeah, we started it as, instead of bringing every little minor detail back to the board, this committee was formed during the bond to kind of direct where the building bond money should be spent. And now that that's all done, now it's just kind of looking at all facilities and where needs are and what what we should be looking at, or looking into the future, I guess. What projects are out there, what we need.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
So, you and I think Mr. Starr on that, and I remember those reports from back in the day, and that was very worthwhile. And I also think that, maybe it's because I'm in construction, I think that's just so important, that can be a good first line if things, need to be brought to the board's attention, or if there's other things that, other items that people come up with that could be utilized once shed light upon.
Yeah, and if we're not sure, then my suggestion would be to keep those two committees. There's no harm in doing it. I think we've differentiated the tasks that the activities advisory committee does versus the Schedule C and D committee. So we can make it work if we keep both of those committees.
Mr. Schulman.
Yeah, I guess for me, I would like to keep the facilities committee, Schedule C and D, and the activities one. I see them as two different things, but I could also see that they could be combined. I think you would just, for the Schedule C and D, I think we need to add more people to that mix than what's currently there. But, because the activities one is more, it has teachers and everybody, it has coaches and other things that are more tied in with the activities and athletics than I think just Schedule C and D. But I see the overlap as well.
So as a point of clarification, how did you divide the two, the activity and the C and D?
Yeah, there was, the teacher agreement has certain language. And I think, well, when I first started here, there was some crossing of who does what. And so that's when I changed kind of the purpose of each one of those committees. And so Schedule C and D is focused on the things that are specifically listed there. And then I took everything else and put it in the activity advisory committee. So, and like Rob said, it meets maybe 2 or 3 times a year, if that, the activity advisory. Schedule C and D is intense for a period of time during negotiations, but it's really not intense at other times.
Mr. Schulman.
Sorry, I'm gonna open up a can of worms here, but we have a book policy that has a committee for, but doesn't have board members on it, but should that be listed here?
Well, this is specifically for board member representatives on committees or liaisons, like with external organizations. So if the board, for example, added school board member or members in the future of the review committee, then we'd add it here.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yeah, if I could throw out a suggestion, we're gonna be good either way, if we keep those two committees or not. So perhaps we could keep both the activities advisory committee and the facilities committee, and then kind of more carefully evaluate it this year to see if some of the committee structures should change. That gives everyone here, like a year to really look at that and decide. So that would be a very easy change to make compared to the recommendation. But again, it depends on the motion that's made.
I make a motion that we, I don't even know where.
Just so I'll highlight what we just discussed. We talked about any meeting that were to occur before our next regular scheduled meeting on the 27th. Those currently in place would continue with those committee assignments as we work through the new assignments. There was discussion on not striking the athletic activities advisory committee or the facility committee. And there's also talk about adding board representation on the C&D committee, as well as an additional meet and confer. That was what was just questioned. The superintendent and the rest of the admin answered those questions, that is all feasible, that we can do that. So now is there a call for a motion for the 2025 school board committee liaison assignments? Mr. Humphrey.
I call to what you just said.
Is there a second? Mr. Schoenrock. So the current motion, actually, we're going to do a discussion first. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, the current motion is to keep the 18 that are currently not striked through, add the athletic activities advisory committee back in, the facilities committee back in, add a school board representation to schedule C&D, in addition to meet and confer. That is the current motion that is on the table. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed to that motion signify by saying nay. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
For the record, who made the motion? Was it in there?
Nope, Mr. Humphrey made the promotion.
Okay.
Mr. Schoenrock second. All right, moving on to agenda item 3.6, annual designation and other annual routine authorizations and actions. The list of authorization and actions is in the workbook, and Dee Dee, our Director of Business Services, will provide an update and answer any questions. Dee Dee, do you have any updates?
No
Anything?
additional updates. The information provided in front of you is a routine item for school districts to go through and designate the different entities to be our little designations.
Are there any questions prior to a motion being made for Dee Dee on any of those authorizations? All right, is there a call to motion for annual designation and other annual routine authorizations and actions? Ms. Anderson? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Schoenrock, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Ms. West?
So I'm curious, it says Kennedy and Graven, the attorney, we sent out to 3 attorneys and only none of them responded except this one. So that's why we're going with Kennedy and Graven.
Yeah, I think even if the other 2 entities had submitted something, as long as it was within the ballpark, we would recommend keeping Kennedy and Graven. But in what I've learned, not obviously from this round of review, but previously Kennedy and Graven provides very competitive rates compared to other experts in school legal matters.
Ms. West?
So I'm curious how we know that the rates are competitive if we're not getting information back on other, and
Yeah, in previous school districts, of course, I've surveyed, for this kind of information. I've spoken, many months ago about comparative data in terms of legal rates. And this is, Kennedy and Graven has been competitive with those, within those discussions.
Any other discussion?
One thing I'd like to point out, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
can we pull legal counsel out of here, approve the others, and come back to that after we've had at least 2 more estimates or 2 more bids and what the would cost?
Ms. Anderson?
I have significant concerns with moving away from the current attorney that we have. We have pending legal action currently that we will be paying for another attorney to come up to speed on those issues. We potentially could have a pending lawsuit currently with our actions regarding banning books. I think that's a huge risk. And in accordance with Minnesota state statute, we are violating the law in accordance with our Poor ethics. Just read it, so everybody's aware. In fulfilling my legal obligations as a school board member, I will comply with federal, state, and local law related to my work as a school board member. We're currently violating the law. We've been put on notice.
If I could jump in just for the decision making, Annette asked to pull the item, so we could consider this like a consent agenda where we discuss that after we approve everything else. So go through with the approval process for a bond council, official repository, those things, and then we'll come back to discuss this particular item. Because Annette asked to pull it, I think that makes sense. And then we can discuss that more fully then.
Correct, yep, and that does not require a second, so we will pull back the approval of our legal representation from the list of the annual designation and our routine authorizations and actions.
But then we'll talk about it next, during this meeting.
So I'm walking through Robert's rules here, so the motion was for all of them, so I think we actually need to amend that because it included all of them. So is there a call for amendment to that motion?
I make a motion that we amend the previous motion to withdraw for this vote legal counsel.
Is there a second? Mr. Humphrey? Okay. All right, so to be clear, the motion that's on the floor is to approve all the annual designation, other annual routine authorizations and actions minus the legal counsel. That is being pulled, and we will address that right after this vote. All in favor of the current motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed to the motion signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 6-1. All right, we will move to now discuss the legal counsel. Ms. West.
I just think it would be important for us to have apples compared to apples and not just stick with the status quo because nobody else responded. I just think it's good to see what's out there. So to give them a chance to come back with some numbers and compete.
Before I call on anyone else, Mr. Anderson, can you just give us a quick update on the bids that went out? And then if there's any timeline for contract agreement with them, given our current status?
Yeah, and I did not ask for particular bids or quotes for the services. I called one of the legal firms, and then I sent an email to one of the partners of the second firm, just asking for the current rates. But I did not specifically ask for a quote for services. Did I answer that question well enough?
Yeah, the first part. The second part, is there any timeline that we have to have counsel? Does the current contract we have with them expire, or no contract?
We would, it will continue indefinitely until a different legal counsel is selected, if that happens.
Ms. Anderson?
This feels very arbitrary because because our legal counsel advised us in a fashion that some board members were opposed to, and it feels like we're targeting one of our organizations that we partner with. We didn't ask no questions were raised about who's our bond counsel and how many votes or how many different bids we got for that. Nobody asked about official depository. Nobody asked about who does our audits. It really feels like we're targeting one group because some board members didn't give us support on an issue where they would like legal to provide support. And quite frankly, I think that's wrong.
Mr. Schoner?
Mr. Anderson, do you know what other districts pay their attorneys?
That's a good question. I have not asked that question this year, but I could certainly find that out.
Mr. Humphrey?
Sorry, I don't have my computer, but is Jill, what you brought up, are the other ones unopposed as well?
We just approved them all.
I'm
And
saying,
nobody asked a question on any of those.
like, were they sold to, like, no contest bids?
I don't know, but no questions were asked on any of the rest of them, but one was specifically targeted. And if we're going to look at getting bids for that one, I want to know every piece of work that is currently outstanding and how much it will cost to transition that work to somebody else,
So if
because
I,
that will be additional cost.
I do know in our board packet, there was 2 newspaper bids that came back. I can't speak to the other ones, but the board packet itself does have 2 on that. Mr. Schoenhardt, you have your hand up?
Yeah, well, just to clarify, so Mr. Anderson, at your other districts, you paid about the same as what they quoted.
Of course, this was years ago.
Right.
So I know at my most recent district, it was actually the same offer. So it was slightly lower, but of course, as time goes on, those costs go up. And I know that I've gone through a process then of soliciting information from other trainings. And Canadian Grado was right in line, maybe even on the lower end at that time. So that would have been 3-5 years ago.
I would like to make a motion that we table our decision on legal counsel until we get at least 2 other, ideas of the draft, because this is a high dollar item. This is one that we're paying a lot of money when we utilize them. I would like to be competitive and have some competitive numbers. Bond counsel, that doesn't fluctuate. Depository, Village Bank of St. Francis, they're local. I highly support local business. Financial auditor, I don't know a lot about them, except that their fees are gonna maybe fluctuate. Maybe that's the next one we look at. And Anoka County Union Herald, they're local. They're in our area, so, that's why I'm okay with that. I just feel like with legal counsel, there could be the potential for a lot of money saved if we found somebody who was a little less expensive. Not saying that there is, but I'm saying I'd like to see the information before I make a decision.
Are you making a motion, or was that just a comment that you want to make?
I make a motion that we table it for the next meeting, or until we get the information.
Yeah, so what I had written down, but, it's obviously your motion, so it's up to you, but what I had written down is that Annette moves to table the motion about legal counsel until 2 other legal counsel hourly cost rates are contained.
Yeah.
I didn't say it as nicely, but I think that's the gist of what I suggested.
Okay, motion on the floor is what the superintendent just said. I'm not gonna repeat it again. Is there a second? Samson, thank you. All in favor of discussion? Thank you, Rob.
So is there a timeline for this, or are we looking for other bids, or just these 2, or what? I guess we need some direction for the superintendent.
Mr. Anderson, do you have a recommendation on a timeline of when you can get those requests for proposals or quotes?
Well, no, I don't have a specific timeline because it depends on how formal we want it to be. I could reach out to the same 2 firms, who do the majority of work in Minnesota's public schools and see if they're willing to do it. Or I could at least find out, what our other schools in the area or in Minnesota pay. Or I could work with Edie and Brandon and actually come up with requests for proposals. But if we do that, then that will take more time. It could take a couple of months.
So what's the ramifications if this isn't passed tonight? Are we just still using them until it's passed then?
That's my assumption. We'd have to, because we need legal counsel on, things like human resources, general matters, different policies, and everything that's listed there.
So we still have representations.
What's that?
We'd still have representation.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming. I mean, we'd have to continue with someone.
Right.
So I know there could be, questions, as far as the timing of selection, but yeah, we would pursue, we'd continue with Kennedy and Graven unless there was a change.
Jordan,
Is the current council on a retainer that we hold with them, or is it like based on fee basis as services are needed?
Yeah, it's a services are needed, so we pay an hourly rate for their service. Depends on if a partner is providing the service or association is providing the service.
Thank you.
And obviously, we'd never want to choose the cheapest one just because of the cheapest. We have to rely heavily on expertise and experience and background, the breadth of their work. And that's why there's just a small handful of providers in the state who really do good work for school districts. And they constantly change. We have partners going and people merging and those kinds of things. But there are 3 primary ones now in Minnesota.
any further discussion?
I guess I kind of share Joe's point on if there are other non-contested bids, we should be pulling those as well. Or we should, if the legitimate concern is that we don't have other competitive bids, we should get those competitive bids, of course. If our precedents even amongst this topic itself is that it's just this one that's inconsistent, but I don't necessarily think that's proper.
Could we get dollar amounts associated with this and frequency of use? Because I think that could help us determine what we actually focus on and what we don't, because like bond counsel, I'm familiar with Dorsey. They come at a high rate, and that's fine if we want to use them, but I don't know what that frequency looks like. So I get Annette's point, if it's 64 grand routinely that we're paying out to Kennedy and Graven, and everything else is 5,000 twice a year, whatever those numbers are, that's a huge difference.
So I hear what you're saying. I'm going to bring us back to the current item that we're discussing is just the legal counsel piece. We've already approved the other one, so if we want to take further action on that, we'll have to do that at a future meeting with a future agenda item. But for tonight, we're currently just speaking on the legal counsel. Ms. Anderson?
And our rates for Kennedy and Graven are going to be directly attributed to what issues we have going on in this district. For instance, if we have lots of human resources issues going on, it's going to be high in human resources. If we have lots of special education issues going on, that's going to bring up our costs. So we probably should look at what our legal spending is over a period of time to even understand what we're spending, because somebody might be a little bit cheaper, but it might be also because this year we've had a lot of legal costs. Or previous year there's a lot of legal costs. This year could be exponentially more based on what's going on.
One possibility, if there are concerns about who represents us on specific issues, is that we could continue with Kennedy and Graven, or really any one of these school specialty firms for the bulk of the work. And then if there's a specific issue, we could contract with another legal firm. I'll give you an example again from another district, but the legal counsel for the other district was Kennedy and Graven. They're very pleased with their work. They're prompt, they're quick, all that stuff. But when there was a claim against the school district, a discrimination claim, then the insurance carrier that represented the school district selected a different firm to work on the discrimination claim. And so, there could be a variety of issues where we want to contract with a different legal counsel. Another example could be, and I don't anticipate this this year, but if there was a simple real estate transaction and we have a local attorney who is proficient in that kind of work, then we can contract with that legal firm to do that specific project. So again, I don't anticipate either one, but there are options as far as using, for example, Kennedy and Graven for the bulk of work, and still choosing another firm for something else. And I don't know if Brandon has any comments to make about your work with. Actually, Nathan, it's really your call as far as if you want Brandon.
Mr. Nelson, if you have something to add, by all means.
There is some efficiency using a consistent attorney. They do become familiar with things that might be unique to the school district. For example, they've seen our collective bargaining agreements I'm looking as far as a human resources perspective. They're familiar with those, they're familiar with our policies, and there's efficiency with that as far as if we have an issue that we bring them to that firm. They already have a lot of background, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Any other discussion? Okay, the current motion on the table is from Ms. West to get at least 2 more bids for legal counsel. There is no timeline associated with the current motion.
Yeah, and again, it wouldn't be bids, it would be prices or hourly costs.
Hourly rates, correct. All right, that's the motion that's on the floor. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed to that motion signify by saying nay.
Nay.
I think we need a roll call vote to show of hands.
We'll do a roll call vote. I'll start with Mr. Working. We'll go back to in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Okay, Mr. Working.
Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay. Nay.
Aye.
And nay.
So that failed 3 to 4, right?
Correct. The motion failed. All right, is there a call for any other motion for legal counsel? Ms. Anderson?
Motion for Kennedy and Graven for our legal counsel for 2025.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Is there a second? Mr. Schoenrock, thank you. Any discussion? No discussion. The motion on the floor is from Ms. Anderson to retain legal counsel of Kennedy and Graven for 2025. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed signify by saying nay.
No.
Another roll call?
Yeah, we'll do another roll call.
It went the same way.
It went the same way.
Oh, it did?
Yep.
Okay,
We're good.
all right.
Motion passes.
Thanks, Jack, for agreeing.
4-3. All right, agenda item 4, consideration of visitors. As per district policy 206, members of the public will be provided the opportunity to address the board. We have 5. We have 5 individuals wanting to speak tonight. We will allow up to 5 minutes for each. Vanessa, will you please let them know when they have reached the 2 minute and 30 seconds, as well as when they have 30 seconds left.
Yeah, 4 minutes. Oh, I got you. Okay, sorry.
Oh, I got 2 jobs?
Yeah.
Good job, yeah. There will be no board action on any request during consideration of visitors. The superintendent or myself will address any comments if required for consideration of visitors. Our first one tonight is Mr. Rolfe. Mayor of Oak Grove to provide an update. Mr. Oak.
Great. Well, good evening. Thank you, Chair and Board, for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm here to give an update regarding the city. I'm not going to bore you tonight with roads and buildings and things like that, but things that directly affect our youth and your students in the district here. For those of you that don't know, like I said, I'm Wes Ralph, Mayor of Oak Grove. I came to you a couple of years ago and told you, some of you are obviously new here, welcome to the new board. But I told you it was important to me to try to get our city involved with the community when it comes to the youth. I feel like the school district and communities tend to kind of ignore one another, and so it was my goal to try to bring us together. The good news is I have a really good council that agreed with me. So some of these things that we've done, and again, for a couple of you, you're already aware of this, but since there's so many board members, I thought I would come tonight. To get a little off track here for just a moment, the reason why I came tonight is usually we have our meetings the same night as yours. I found out last night that yours was tonight, so that's why I'm here. But one of the things that we voted, and all of these things was unanimous. And I think that's important just to show what type of council that we have. Is one, we wanted to have a council member liaison here, which is Councilmember Paul Tradewell. He's not here every meeting, again, because most of the time our meetings are the same night. But when occasionally they're not, that's when you'll see him here. I talked a little bit about charitable gambling last time that a lot of people don't know, but when you have an establishment in your community that sells pull tabs, the city gets 10%. Now, there's only so many things that the city can do with it. You can't put it into your operating expenses and so on and so forth. But one of the things that you can do is you can actually give it back to the youth. So what we decided a couple years ago is to give approximately 1/3 of those funds back when requested. We're not just going to start throwing money here and there, but somebody actually comes to the city and requests that. We look at it and we kind of move forward with that. Just to give you an idea, in 2023, we gave $3,500 back. And in 2024, we gave $6,200 back, totaling $9,700 into your students who are in different sports and so on and so forth. I'm going to give you a little breakdown here, and hopefully I'm not boring you with this. But in 2023, we gave, and I hope they wrote my notes down correctly, because I'm not sure what fast break Saints is. If that's something, we gave them $500. If they typed it wrong, hopefully somebody will figure out what that
Girls
is.
basketball.
$2,500 to the cross country and track team. $500 to the East Bethel PTO, which I believe assisted in their, I think they got a new playground, if I remember right. In 2024, we gave $1,200 to the choir. Part of that was they actually came to our tree lighting event and put on a nice presentation. It was a Friday night. We felt that we should do something for them. So we gave them $1,200. The all-night St. Francis graduation party, if I have that, if I'm explaining that right, $500, $1,000 to the fast pitch softball, another $2,500 to the cross country and track booster club, and $1,000 to the volleyball team. So we only have so much money, but we're open to people submitting a request. We don't want to keep giving it just to the same people. And I did talk about this 2 years ago. This is all I got on it. So I'm starting to think these booster clubs maybe don't want all the money they think they need. But we are open to it. Again, we have a dollar amount that we have to stay within. Some of the other things here that I think are relevant to you with, again, the charitable gambling is we have a Fire Explorer program that particular account funds. And one of the things that really, I think it may hit home for some of you is, I don't know if you've heard of HeartSafe. But basically what that is it's hands-only CPR, and our fire department, with the support of our council, again, unanimous support, has funded to train. The goal is every single high school student at the high school and to continue on. I tried to get the actual number, but I wasn't able to get that, but the goal is to train them all. And again, that's with this Oak Grove City Council and the fire department doing that. Side note, I'm gonna go quick here and skip a few things. Another part of it was with Superintendent Anderson was to form a working relationship with him. He's been great to work with. We try to meet on a quarterly basis. In fact, we meet on Wednesday. And so I'm going to cut it to the end, but for staff in the room, if there's anything I can do, whether it's ever a classroom visit or anything I can do, let me know. And I know you guys aren't going to ask me questions, but I will leave some business cards, and you certainly can contact me anytime. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Mike Starr. Mr. Starr.
Good evening, board, directors, and community members. The new members of the board tonight, welcome to the board. It's going to be an enjoyable 4 years for you. The reason we're coming before the board tonight is just to pass on to the new board chair information. We have the superintendent's files right here for the evaluations, contracts, all the information you need to be a board chair to take a look at. There's good training down at the MSBA conference on that information. I would really encourage all of you, if you can, to go to the MSBA conference, January 16, 17, 2025. I'll leave this with the board chair also for you. It is really educational to go down to that conference for 2 days to pick up some really good information for you. A bit late for tonight, but I do have also to help you out a little cheat sheet for rules of orders and so forth to help you out. It helped me out quite a few times for the last 8 years. The last thing I'll say to the board here is what I wrote on my file here years ago at some training I went to, came from MSBA. One of their comments in training was the school board is meant to set the direction of the district, not to manage the day-to-day operations, which is done by your superintendent. Please keep that in mind as a board member. We do not control the day-to-day operations. Thank you very much, Mr. Berg. This is your file now. There you go.
Thanks, Mike.
Next, Barb Anderson, on the topic is mission and core values.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Anderson. I live in St. Francis, but thanks to Oak Grove, I've been there, and it's so great to see that cooperation that didn't always happen in the past. So wonderful job, Mr. Mayor and your board. So, but to all, welcome to all you new board people. I'm speaking as a community member, totally. And here we have, I want you to kind of picture it as a rope. And you each have a different strand, and we see this working out tonight as you're trying to work through everything that happens. So you each are bringing your different strand of your life experiences, of your political background. Although I want to point out, none of you had a R or a D or an I behind your names when you ran on that ballot. So as a large community, we need you to not be a political group. You are our school board as a community, and we trust you to do that. That's of utmost importance. So you each bring your strand and you bring it together. How is that going to tighten? How is that going to be as strong as it can be? Wise use of money, the best for our students, the best for our staff. How can that happen? The only way that's going to happen, so my present to you is, the mission statement and the core values, they're often hidden behind this, these little thingies here, these screens, okay? But if we stray from these, we get in trouble, and we do not come together with a strong rope, with a strong community together. The only way this is gonna happen is when we look at these and we make our decisions, or you make your decisions, but we as a community expect that from you, and we trust you will do it, and we thank you for doing it and for the time and energy you put into it. We're thankful to these students too, right? So in that way, that all those strands, wherever you're coming from, thank you for your experience, thank you for your time, and all the staff that work on this behind the scenes that we don't even know about in the community, and the parents and just everybody who works on it. But you come together and it'll be tighter and it will be strong and it'll hold up whatever issues come and try and pull on it. Some will pull one way, some will pull the other, but you will stay steady, you will go straight if we go back, if you keep to the mission and also to those core values on any decision. So thank you, that's your gift. Wish I had some money like a girl, but no. But thank you all and keep that road strong and centered. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Next, I believe it's James Jones.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Mr. Jones. Topic is ignore legal advice.
I am happy to be here and pleased to meet with you, superintendent, board members, school officials, and the public. I am a farmer who happens to have a law degree, so I'm not appearing here as a lawyer, I'm appearing as a farmer. I am a 7-year resident of St. Francis. I got a law degree about 49 years ago, never practiced, passed the bar, went home and farmed. And nothing I say should be interpreted as legal advice. Whenever anyone asks me for legal advice, I tell them to go see a practicing attorney. I tell them I've forgotten more about the law than most people will know. I express no opinion as to what books should be banned and what shouldn't. But I appear before you only to question the rationale and logic of banning books and ignoring legal advice. I came upon watching TV half asleep, Channel 9, and they said, we'll break now and we'll come back with the North Suburban School District that has voted to ban books. And I thought to myself, oh, please no, not St. Francis. St. Francis has seen a share of characters on school boards and city councils. There was a young man on a school board who was guilty of plagiarism. There was a party that thought they were superintendents of schools and stuck their nose where it didn't belong. And now we've got 4 people who are ignoring legal advice. It's music to my ears that only 2 are left. So I'm speaking to those 2, and I'm speaking to the new members. When you get on these boards, it's important to know your role. You may watch the WWF with Dwayne Anderson or Dwayne Johnson. He's now a movie star. He was known as The Rock, and his watchword was know your role. And I grew up in a household which was kind of different. I had my grandparents there, my parents there, my brother and sister, and my dad's kid sister. And we got people from the horse and buggy days all the way up to launching to the moon. So it was a different thing. My grandmother was one to read the paper to us kids when some story piqued her interest. And I think if she was alive today, she would have read about the school board banning books and ignoring legal advice, and would have said there was something rotten in Denmark. And my father, when he encountered people whose rational logic didn't make sense to him, would say, where did you go to school? And those who want to ban books, I think, are failing the schools they went to or the schools that failed them. I think by ignoring legal advice, you're doing the community a disservice. You're doing the school a disservice, and you're doing the students a disservice. You impart the advice that you don't have to follow legal advice. And I think that is not something to be done. If someone wants to tell me, I want to move to St. Francis, what could you say? You've been here 70 years. I would say, well, I'll tell you what, they don't follow the legal advice. You want to bring your kids up that way? You know,
Mr. Jones, that's the 5 minute time. If you have a final statement, that's okay, but that is the 5 minute time.
boy, time went fast. My final statement would be that, if I had been on the board and there had been a motion to ignore legal advice, I would move to, cancel the contract with the, legal people because we have 4 amateur lawyers on the board. Couple of adages from school, advice is what you pay for it. Those who serve as their own attorneys have fooled their clients. And the last thing I got in school on the way out the door in a land use planning class for my practicing attorney was, you young men and women are going out to represent people on land use questions. Always remember there's no law against making a fool of yourself. So, I wish you well, and thank you for, the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Next is Ryan Furyk. Welcome. Mr. Furyk.
Congratulations, new board chair, vice chair, new leadership, as well as the new members that join us today. My name is Ryan Furyk. I currently serve in multiple hats that have brought me to this podium for the last, I think you can now say, over 13 years of attending school board meetings. With an inability to connect with a few of the new school board members, I wanted to make sure that I had a chance to share with you, hopefully a little bit of advice as you take on the new role. In my time, even if I've disagreed with school board members, past school board members have been willing to pick up the phone and listen. As one of the roles I play as local president of Education Minnesota St. Francis, which serves not just the teachers, but the educational assistants, the nutrition staff, transportation, office professionals. And I used to say preschool, but they're now teachers now. So we're really proud of the work that was done there. And I get a chance to serve them. And I also get the chance to serve my 3 children in the school district. And I moved my family out here after I started my career because I believed in what we were doing out here. We have very many unique opportunities for not just teaching staff to learn to be better, but also our students have a very unique learning pathway here. Right now, my biggest concern in that realm is they don't have a lot of choices. And they don't have a lot of opportunities because we don't have enough to go around. But you set the direction on those kind of conversations as far as what we can look at the future looking like. The bit of advice I'll give you is as you start to drink from the fire hose that I've had experience holding for Bethel Fire Department for a few years ago in this role, you agreed to a set of committee work today that had dates on it. But there's a whole nother set of committee work that isn't on that document. I ask that you lean into the committee work and show up to it because it makes a difference that you're there to hear the stories of the staff members and some of the committee work, the students that are there. Just having your name assigned to a committee doesn't mean you're going to be there all the time. But when you don't show up, I hear about it because they want to be heard. They want to hear and share their stories with you so that you will advocate at this table for them. That's not meant to put you into a pickle or anything, but in order to get a chance to know what's going on behind the scenes, it depends on you showing up too. And that can be a huge responsibility when you really look at it. So I hope that you're ready to tackle these challenges that we've got. And even though we're going to disagree on things in the future, and there's a topic we significantly disagree on now, I'm really excited that you're able to join us today. We'll deal with the disagreements later. So thank you.
There is no other consideration of visitors. We'll move on to agenda item number 5, consent agenda. Per district policy 203.6, we will now approve items within the consent agenda. There are currently 5 items in the meeting consent agenda. Are there any questions or requests to remove an item from the consent agenda prior to a motion being made?
I just have a few questions about 5.5, so if we can approve, the bulk of them, and then discuss 5.5.
Is you're asking us to pull 5.5? So pull 5.5.
Can we just discuss it during the board on all of them? That's what we've done in the past.
Your request to pull it? The request is to pull it, so we'll pull it. So we will be voting. If there's a motion, it'll be for 5.1 to 5.4. Is there a call motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve 5.1 through 5.4.
Thank you, Ms. West and Mr. Humphrey. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve 5.1 to 5.4 of the consent agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, signify by saying nay. Motion passes 7-0. All right, the item that was pulled is 5.5, expenditure request theater.
I just have a question, and probably you can answer it. Because this is really last minute. We've talked a lot about this at previous meetings. I mean, this is this weekend, but the registration was closed on December 9th. So why are we just getting this now?
Yeah, the district office received the request today, late morning or early afternoon, so I'm not sure why it wasn't forwarded to us earlier. But we received it today. I think, again, I don't know for sure, but I think the Booster Club may do a lot of the planning for it. And there may have been a miscommunication between Booster Club and the high school as far as getting the information to us. We received it today. Because it directly impacts students, that's why I wanted to add it to the agenda. But we'll make it clear to the high school staff involved that we need to follow our procedures for submitting those overnight trip requests at a time of action. Yeah.
Motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve 5.5. Is there a second? Mr. Shorrock, discussion. Mr. Shorrock.
Discussion. Just as a coach on the girls basketball team, we just had a trip up to Hibbing. And so we had to go through this same form. There's just a lot of behind the scenes stuff with the Booster Club. We're trying to get all of it in line with the hotel stays and all the times when we're going to be there. So I'm not saying, not giving an excuse of why it's now, but there's things that prolong. And plus, they could have given it earlier, and then the AD has to sign off on it, the principal has to sign off on it, and then it's got to come over here. So there is a process to it. I'm not sure when the process for this exact one started, but just a
Just
little
with
bit
the holiday break, and again, they're not, our intent is to get these to us early enough so they can be processed and put in with the board agenda back, on Thursday before the board meeting.
Yeah, that would be good, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, the current motion on the floor is to approve 5.5. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there another 7-0? All right, next agenda item is 6.1. Tonight we're going to receive a presentation on the 2024 audit report from MMKR. Dee Dee, our Director of Business Services, along with Aaron Nielsen from MMKR, the audit firm, will provide the findings of the audit. Board members, please try to hold questions to the end of the presentation. Dee Dee.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Anderson, and community members, I'm very happy today to say that we've made it through the audit process and audit session, and we'll have a report from Mr. Nielsen here. I first want to start off by thanking individuals that did help to make this happen. I want to include Josh Brzezinski that's here, as well as Pam Jensen, who's worked on behalf of that business office and the HR staff and other junior staff who helped make it happen. On your desk in front of you, you have a number of reports, and they're the same reports that are in the action item later. So I just wanted to point out a couple of things. The biggest document is this comprehensive annual financial report. This is the first time the school district has done this lengthy report. And it took a fair amount of task to do that. There's a lot more statistics in it, a lot more information in it. It provides more information to the community than, say, a regular smaller audit report. I know it's a lot. I know you haven't had a chance to read probably through all of it, but I encourage you to do that at some point in time. It's a great report. We will be submitting this to the ASBO, the Association of School Business Officials, for their Certificate of Excellence Award. It's a process that we go through, and once we get that, then we should be able to do that. It's a good recognition for the community and for the financial management of the district. Second, there's two other reports, and I'm sure Eric's going to talk about these as well. If you need the short, condensed, easy version, I really recommend you reading the management reports. The maroon color, the short one, is a great synopsis if you just want to get a quick read and then have time to dive into the other one. And then, of course, the special purpose report is included as well. So with that, I'm very happy to have Nielsen here with MMKR to provide a report on the audit. I'll turn it over to Aaron.
All right, so I'm jumping a lot, getting used to the classes and as I've aged, I can't do the one thing anymore. So I'll try to work with all the buttons and work through the financial statements. So as mentioned, my name is Aaron Nielsen. I was a partner in charge of your audit for this past year. The term we refer to your financial statements now as an ACFR, for the annual comprehensive financial report. So a more detailed document that the district's prepared in the past. A lot of departments are involved in the work that go into that. As Dee has mentioned, the special purpose reports include the requirements under government auditing standards, the Single Audit Act, and the Legal Compliance Manual. And then you also have the management report as mentioned. So I'm fighting a cold, so I have a cough drop in my mouth, so I don't want you to think I'm chomping on some gum here and trying to present it for you. But our management report, we utilize to share some of the key information results of our audit, and PowerPoint presentation I have before you tonight is not to have one more thing for you to go through. It really is just some pieces I've pulled that I've used to keep us on the same page with the presentation and keep the camera off of me and share it with the general public as well. So with that, I'll make my way through the PowerPoint. I'm happy to take questions at the end. If there's anything, we can move back to the slides. But I'll make my way through as we go through it. So our role as independent auditors of the district, we've issued our audit results, the district's financial audit, so that ACFR. We've issued what is known as an unmodified or clean opinion on the basic financial statements. So the financial information you find in that document is fairly stated as of June 30th, 2024, and the results of operations for the year that ended. The second bullet point I put there really was just to highlight the additional work your staff keeps incurring because of the changes under government auditing standards. I think when we started, we were at, I want to say 27 good GASB's, government auditing standards. I know we're well over, well, not well over, but we're over 101 that we've implemented now. And so it keeps changing. This past year wasn't even actually a standard, but just a change in literature. So group assets is what we refer to it. So capital assets that maybe alone don't meet the capitalization threshold, but if you're running a lot of them together and it's significant, they now require you or would suggest you should be capitalizing on it. So really that's capturing technology devices, as well as at times you'll buy furniture in large clumps if you're replacing lunchroom furniture or other classroom desks. When you're buying them in mass, you will now be capitalizing them. With regard to the internal control and compliance, that second bullet point I've noted there, you will see we've noted 2 material weaknesses, and that's with the financial reporting in accordance with government auditing standards, this lack of a proper segregation of duties, and then the process of cash receipts, and I'll expand that. It was more detailed into gate receipts, specifically at the high school. Just that was identified during the audit process, and we confirmed through the audit procedures, and wanted to share with you as a part of our audit process the internal control comment we have with regard to that. So largely we've identified due to turnover in staff and new positions this past year. We've had some turnover in the business office as well that has created that finding in the past couple of years with regard to the segregation of duties. But processing the cash receipts, we spent a lot of time meeting with staff, talking with individuals at the district and at the site, as well as I know the district's working through that process to make improvements to internal controls, process, procedures in place for the organization. My last slide on the audit results, the next slide you see here is a single audit of federal awards. We've issued what is known as a clean opinion on the SFAS, which is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So you receive well in excess of the current threshold of $750,000 of federal award spending. They will be moving that up to $1 million. I think it'll be a couple of years before the district can take advantage of that, but it won't matter, you're beyond that threshold anyway. So you'll continue to have that separate single audit of your federal awards. But we also have no material weaknesses or instances of non-compliance with regard to that testing. And then the last area we had was the Minnesota Office of the State Auditor's Legal Compliance Manual. There are 7 broad categories, and within that, there's a number of tests that are included in there with regard to depositories, public investments, the legal, your debt limits, your debt issuance, and so on. So miscellaneous provisions, claims and disbursements. And we had just one comment with regard to that testing of all the areas, the requirement for timely payment of invoices. So as local governments, you have that meet once a month. You have a requirement to make sure you're paying your invoices within 35 days of the service or the invoice date, or within what's acceptable to the vendor providing that. So we just had some instances where we found they were paid after that timeline. So yeah, as I know the board members are aware, it's not my job to make excuses for, but I do like to share. It's not necessarily an uncommon finding that we'll come across. Some of the occasions we'll find is there's a checks and balances going back and forth. Did you receive the number of units you purchased? Getting the approvals, or sometimes it's how late do you get the invoices, and it's dated, and it'd be almost direct to the 35 days, and it'd be impossible for you to pay. So we'd recommend you look at your procedures, make sure you're identifying what is the cause of it. If it's within the district, making sure individuals that are part of the process know that timeline. If you're challenging an invoice because you're not certain you received all of the goods or happy with the goods you received, I would say you can document that, and that would be acceptable to us. But you want to make sure you're documenting that as you go through the process, and not after we've discovered it or we've selected that invoice. So with that, the rest of my presentation is really based on the information, some historical data that we pulled together. It is included all in your management report, but just some information to show you the financial position and some of the drivers of the revenue for your organization. As you can see here, we showed the adjusted ADM of average daily membership, and then which gets converted to pupil units based on a weighting system where secondary students get a heavier weighting. So that conversion occurs with the process to pay you based on a student count. So we include that because just the funding really following the number of students you serve as part of the basic funding formula allowance. So this past year, your organization served an estimated ADM or student population of 4,107 students. That represents a decrease of about 91 compared to the prior year, or about 2.2% when we compare that to what we found out as final numbers for 2023. So 2024 currently is an estimate as we close the books out. That doesn't get finalized until all the statement data is gathered. But we do come and restate the 23 number in the graph to what the final enrollment count did become through the MD's process. The next slide I have for you really shows just a kind of a financial position where the district's been over the past 10 years. I know I've been in the presentation and talked about where the district had a very lean fund balance position, low cash balance, and you can see that the district really has improved that financial position over the past several years. I know it's a challenging process, and really it's easy as an auditor to stand up here and say it's important to do it, but it comes at a cost, and it's a difficult process that involves the staff, the board, to get there. When you look at 2023 to 2024, I would say it's a very similar financial position, really, showing the growth in cash investments and that unrestricted fund balance consistent with the growth in expenditures this past year. To dive a little deeper into the general fund, and I do have a few slides for the general fund. It is your primary operating fund for the organization. So the breakdown I have for you here is looking at the components of the equity, the fund balance when we talk about governmental funds. Non-spendable being made up of the resources that you've spent but haven't utilized yet. So inventory and prepaid dollar amounts within the general fund would be considered non-spendable. You can't utilize those dollars for something else without going selling those and then recouping it for another purpose. You'd really likely just burn through that through insurance or supplies and materials. The restricted category, you can see there was a slight uptick in that. That would capture your long-term facilities maintenance, operating capital dollars, basic skills, a lot of the state restricted requirements that you receive resources for. And then unrestricted fund balance and capture dollars of the organization where you can set them aside for your purpose. So it doesn't involve an outside source. The district has also delegated that authority to individuals within your organization. They're allowed to assign fund balances for a particular purpose, but a common one we see is when an organization adopts a budget for the subsequent year and your deficit spending. And so we recognize that today we're presenting about 6 months into your next fiscal year. And so a portion of the fund balance of your deficit spending gets set aside as an assigned fund balance because you're already counting on those dollars to be utilized through the budget process that you're working through in the current fiscal year. So that outlines a good example of an assigned fund balance. As you can see, there was an increase in overall equity, but a very minimal change in that fund balance percentage is 0.5% when you look at unrestricted, and then assigned with slightly more of an increase, but it's a shift between the components of that unrestricted, assigned, and unassigned. Looking at the general fund revenues this past year, I'm sorry, I want to back up one slide. I should share with you. With this fund balance position, as you can see here, recently you have continued to meet your fund balance policy. So I know it's an important policy of the board, and you have again continued to meet that. With regard to the general fund revenues this year, to share with I know the board's well aware of this through the budget process, but with the public and people that are watching, the total revenues this past year of the general fund amounted to about $61.1 million for your organization. Just to give you a gauge of the size of the operation that you're working with. Just a couple of comments. This past year, you came in, I would say, very close to budget, about 1.8% over budget. As a conservative accountant, I like to see revenues coming in over budget, expenditures coming in under budget of what was approved. So this past year, you're seeing now an increase in the over budget of revenues at 1.8%. And then about a 6.9% increase over the prior year. So that increase clearly wasn't because of the additional students you served with the decline, but there were funding improvements that helped provide additional resources to the district this past year. that basic formula allowance for general education funding. There's an increase for basic skills funding this past year. And then one of the big pushes was special ed cross subsidy funding. That was a big deal for school districts in 2024. So some of the message I'm sharing with a lot of districts this year. The other areas, you can see that other category of revenues, which when we look at your graph, that really makes up about 6.6% of your total revenues coming in over the prior year, over budget. That's split between investment earnings as a key component, about 1/3 of that. And then the balance of that is fees and local collections that you're having at your buildings. So, and what we found with your district, like many others, is the investment has improved significantly the past couple of years. It's been an area where districts have been afraid to budget aggressively with it because it's been so long where you were earning very minimal amounts of investment earnings. So seeing a favorable result compared to budget for investment earnings, and then the other areas, local collections that you really can't control. It's based on participation in programs. You have some idea of, when you set your rates for fees and so on, then you anticipate they go up if you can assume the change in the number of participants is going to stay similar, but we generally see people budget conservatively for that area. When you look at property taxes, state sources, the property taxes goes through a very long process, rigorous and involved process with your truth and taxation. So the levy was set to increase. You came in very close to budget, and I would say when you look at your property taxes and state sources, they're almost spot on and offset one another. And it's because of county apportionment, which when you receive that from the county and property taxes, for school districts, that money is taken away in your state aid. So that made up the majority of that variance, and so really coming in very close. The federal sources were slightly under budget, less than prior year, and really due to the timing and the usage of those COVID funds that are running out with those grants in terms of our ability to use those funds is ending. I have a similar graph for the expenditures of your general fund this past year. Expenditures were about $60 million overall for St. Francis area schools. When we look at your expenditures, you can see that, you can't see that total graph, but if you look within your financial statements, you came even closer with your expenditures in total, about 1.2% under what was anticipated in total for the organization, about 7.9% of an increase over the prior year, as I would say, as anticipated with the budget process. Like revenues, there's a concentration. I didn't point it out very timely with the state sources. You can see this past year, state sources for school districts, the majority of revenues, it was 78% for your district in 2024. Likewise, when we talk about educating students in the district, the key component of that is the fees and expenses related to salaries and employee benefits. Making up for your district 77.2%. It was about a 9.4% increase with contract improvements, additional staff filling open positions, but coming in extremely close to the budget for salaries and benefits within a 0.5%, just under budget for those categories. Just a couple more slides and a couple of comments that are tied right to a slide. A couple of your other operating funds is the food service special revenue fund and the community service special revenue fund. We've only included the year-end fund balance, so we're talking about $60 million for the general fund operational activity. These two funds have about $3.2 million of spending in the food service fund, about $3.3 million in the community service special revenue fund. You can see both of them experienced an increase this past year in fund balance. Both of them came in favorably bottom line to what was anticipated in that final budget. Really, I just expressed the board, and I know we've talked about this in the past, is where do you want that sweet spot to be for fund balance? Where within an optimal level for you? So obviously, you would want to continue to grow fund balance. But at year end, you're at about 62% of fund balance for the food service fund, and the community service fund is at 48.9%. So these funds do have to be spent in accordance with the requirements of each of the individual funds, so it's not as though you can transfer them to other areas. The food service fund, federal requirements is required to stay in the food service fund. The community service fund, there's a number of programs within it that you have usage requirements for it. So it's largely, we stress the importance that they're not a drain on your general fund, and you've been successful with that. They're available for certain capital expenditures when you have favorable or positive fund balance. So good to see those in a healthy financial position. My last slide is the most difficult, but before I start talking about this last slide, I did want to mention a couple of your other funds. So you have an internal service fund, which the district uses for self-insured activities in the district for your dental premiums. You're self-insured for dental for your employees. There really isn't nearly the level of activity. I want to say about $400,000 for that activity annually. This past year, there was a decrease in fund balance. I had noted about $40,000, which was a similar decrease to that what was experienced last year. So just important to note that you're making sure you're monitoring rates, which I know you are, and managing those costs on an ongoing basis. So I'm sure you're all seeing increases in health insurance rates and so on, and we're encountering them with our own health insurance premiums. So just being aware of that. So I wanted to make sure I was at least sharing an additional point of not just how everything came in favorably to budget, but a point to make caution of and monitor the rates with the dental self-insurance and where that fund financial position is. The building construction fund, you issued about $2.5 million in bonds this past year. At year end, you have about $1.2 million left available for spending in the construction fund for capital revolving purposes and restricted for that purpose that they were approved for. And then the last one I wanted to mention individually was the debt service fund. The debt service fund, and really I'm sharing this for the public, is that the dollars in the individual funds are largely restricted for the purpose of the funds. So you'll see there's significant resources in your debt service funds as well, restricted for debt service. So it's required and driven by the financing plans as you issue your bonds and managed by the Minnesota Department of Education as well with their process and the levy process. So you saw a slight decrease this past year, but all of those dollars are restricted for debt service. So to this point, I've been talking about your individual funds, which is on a current financial resources measurement focus. So it's the dollars that you're really focusing on. What do you have at hand to be able to put in our programs and utilize for the children and the participants of programs? So it's a very short-term perspective. We don't capture long-term obligations, long-term assets of your infrastructure and the organization, which then we capture with the entity-wide, district-wide financial statements. So with this presentation, we've consolidated all the funds, brought them together. We've incorporated the capital assets. We've incorporated the long-term obligations, which is bonds, your pension obligations from the statewide pension plans, PERA, TRA, and then OPEB adjustments for the entity-wide requirements, since those have been, as one of the more recent GASB standards in theory, prospectively. But you can see the top half, what we've done is give you a breakdown where we talked about the governmental funds. You saw an increase of about $2.3 million. When we go entity-wide, you see an increase of $10 million. So, but one area of caution is part of that increase is because it's tied up in your infrastructure. So we see your net investment in capital assets improving, increasing about $2 million. But that doesn't mean we have $2 million to put into programming. It's tied up in the capital assets of your organization. You're paying off your buildings at a faster pace than they're being depreciated. And we commonly see that. You generally are in your buildings 40 years, maybe longer in many cases, but the bonds associated with building them are generally paid off in 20 to 25 years. Restricted, that's following really the increases we talked about, food service fund, the community service fund, some of the restrictions in the debt service fund. And then the unrestricted category, as you can see, is actually in a deficit position. And that's really driven by that pension line that you can see up in the statewide pension plans. So those pensions for PDRA and TRA are managed separately. It's really a requirement. It's been around about 10 years this year for your organization. We've been incorporating that, but not an area to be concerned. You are meeting your obligations to pay those pension plans, and they really do fluctuate based on the market and how well those plans are funded. And you can see they saw an increase of about 5.6 when we look at our pension investments that year, which translates down to the unrestricted component. And I would say the difference between that then was that improvement in the general fund unrestricted dollars we talked about almost to start the presentation. So with that, I know I don't present the most exciting presentation of the year that you get as an auditor, but I think it goes with the territory of being an auditor. And I'm happy to try to touch base on any of the categories, or, you know, as Dee Dee mentioned, the ACFR has a significant amount of information in there that we could find useful as you move forward as an organization as well. And I'll thank your staff and all those involved in the process, because it is a lengthy process.
Any questions from board members? Questions?
General fund for 24, towards the beginning, was that an estimate or is that final?
I want to make sure I have the right one you're looking at here. Are you talking percent here?
Slide, that's not numbered, but that.
I think it might be also
No,
previous.
Are those the 2024 right there?
As of June 30th, 2024, so your audit year end, yes.
Okay.
For each year, so it's cash and investments. We say net of borrowing because some of those previous years might have been impacted by cash flow borrowing that may have been required. And then unrestricted is not the same as total fund balance, so that would be your committed, assigned, and unassigned dollars. Mhm.
Any other questions from board members?
No concern about the parent deficit.
Not at this time.
Okay.
There are so many estimates and assumptions that are involved with it, the discount rate, the current stock market. And now that we've got 10 years of history, you can kind of see where it's at and where the funding levels are. They have separate audits. And the thing I like about it now, you can really kind of just watch it, and then they get a lot of news, of course, when the new rates come out and they manage how much you have to pay to it. So I wish they were fully funded, so we could say, okay, I don't expect to see any increase in your contribution rates, but I also think there's kind of a balance. If they were fully funded, what happens if we have just a fantastic stock market year? Then they're way overfunded. And so there is kind of a, let's manage it over a long-term perspective. And I think that's what they are doing, is managing it from the long term, trying to stay stable with their discount rates and not being overly aggressive. Their discount rates that are anticipated is about 7% return over the lifetime. Your disclosures share what that obligation will be for you, if it were 1% higher or 1% lower, but you can see it drastically changes. So I think it's informational, but it makes the entity-wide numbers tough to digest because they can swing so fast just for that one component.
Sure.
I do have a question for you. So in our last year report as well, we had a similar comment about segregation of duties. Did you see an improvement in the segregation of duties procedure as it relates to the district operation? Because we know, based on both comments, both years, it's specific to turnover. But did you see an improvement in our procedures, knowing that we can't impact the turnover?
Yeah, I would say it was probably very similar this past year, again, with turnover. I think as we now build and improve and work on policies, as I know I've talked to the superintendent, that will, and we'll hopefully see some improvement with that. But can't speak to the future as your auditor, because then when I come back to audit it, I can't be independent of it. So I'll keep that in check.
All right, Thank you, Aaron, and your team for your work on this audit. We thank you and our staff for your work and the support in getting this accomplished. I know we talked a few of us board members, we like the detail in this report. It would be nice to have some time to digest that, so thank you.
Thank you. Chair,
Thank you.
just say one thing.
Yeah.
Thanks for Dax for creating the cover on that. I think it's beautiful.
It's actually our students and our staff, which I
I know,
absolutely
you
love
did
to
it.
see.
Yeah, so thank you.
Also, I want to point out the work of Josh Berlinka, who is our district accountant, and is taking a larger role in the auditing process this year. It's a learning process, it's a lot of work, but I appreciate it.
All right, moving forward to the most anticipated agenda item tonight, 6.2, the St. Francis High School Student Council Report. We have the privilege of Jack Humphrey here tonight. Jack, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm flattered, Mr. Bird, thank you. I'd like to thank the cabinet for having us here, the superintendent, the new board, thank you, Chair Bird, all the people watching, both here and online. Yeah. And otherwise, let's get started. So first, throughout this speech, I'd like to first talk about the minimal things that the Student Council has done since the last meeting that we appeared at, a little bit of a St. Francis roundup, and then anything coming up within St. Francis or that is currently occurring. First of all, since the last board meeting, of course, the most anticipated event was our community night, which we hosted on December 13th of 2024 at our high school. We had both the middle school and high school jazz bands playing. We had a basketball game, which was not included, but was also at the same time as our community night. We had games for family and kids. We had hot chocolate. There was a choir concert going on, and an overall good night with Santa Claus there as well and his elves. And so it was a great night for both the student council. I know we ran out of our hot chocolate that they were serving, so pretty good success for us, I'd say. Then from there, moving on forward within our student council, the only thing that is really on the board right now, as we have not since had a meeting since that December 13th, is the snow days, which is coming up in February. We will have a pet fest and a spirit week, and of course, crown our snow days king and queen. There won't be a dance as there usually isn't, but otherwise, that's all that I have for you right now on our actual student council. Now moving into a little bit of a St. Francis roundabout, we have a lot that we have currently had happening within St. Francis. Basketball is going on, both boys and girls. There's a game tomorrow at Big Lake, a doubleheader. And wrestling has started up, so has girls and boys hockey. The girls with Northern Tier Stars with North Branch and Cambridge, and the boys with Northern Tier, or Northern Edge with North Branch. I've heard that both of their seasons have been going on as well, and that they've been successful. So I'm glad to hear that so far our sports have been doing well, and I'm anticipating for them to continue up throughout the year. Otherwise, our debate team on the 13th and 14th participated at their national qualifier. Well, the Congress team participated at their national qualifier. Senior Rowan Anderson also participated, and Lincoln Douglas did not advance to the nationals or the elimination round, sadly. But our Congress team did send 6 students out to Quat Lakes, where juniors, Skylar Algier and myself, participated in the final round of Congressional Debate House. Skylar Algier placed 3rd overall, receiving the first alternate spot, and I placed 2nd overall, qualifying to nationals for the first time in our school's history in 4 years, and in that said event for the first time in 13 years. And overall, our team placed so well accumulatively, with also sophomore Caitlin Inderly placing 6th in the Senate, that we won the District Sweepstakes Award for Congressional Debate, which is the first time in 13 years that our school has won that award as well. So the only tournament that's left remaining in our season that is guaranteed is the section tournament for Rowan Anderson this weekend, the 10th and 11th at Egan. Hopefully she'll get her spot at the state tournament, the 17th and 18th at the U of M. And otherwise, we look forward to nationals in June in Des Moines, Iowa. Otherwise, the speech season starts up soon. The 18th, we host our own home meet. And then DECA is also looking for judges for their District 5 competition on January 29th of 2025. There is no past requirements needed or any possible training that you need to do before the meeting. You can go and then learn your training, and you can contact either myself or Ms. Strong, our business teacher and DECA advisor, for the possibility to judge at the St. Cloud Tech Mall in order for us to hold our competition. Otherwise, are there any questions from you all?
One question I have for you would be, I know the city of Oak Grove would love to have a student representative come to their city council meeting periodically just to give updates. And ideally, it'd be someone who lives in Oak Grove, but it doesn't have to be. Would you be willing to try to find a volunteer to go to the city council meeting?
Well, I both live in Oak Grove and have been in communications with Mr. Rolfe through Facebook about possibly attending those meetings or at least finding someone. So I believe so that we will be able to find a student representative from Oak Grove in order to go to those meetings.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be you. I'm just curious if you could try.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, our meetings are the same night, so.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, I think we, are gonna give you a round of applause, because that's a huge. Not for you personally, but for the team itself, because we know it's not just the individual. You guys practice as a team, and that's very important, so that's awesome news, for our high school students, so thanks for sharing that.
If there's one person we could thank, it's Mr. Toole. At the beginning of the season, we didn't have a coach, and he could have let our team continue to fizzle out and not get a coach. But instead, he stepped up and took back the position that he retired from. So big thanks to him for coaching both a national qualifier and a team that had success in a brand new event for the first time in nearly 13 years in our school's history.
Thank you, Jack.
I thank you all.
All right, next agenda item is 6.3, administrative report. Superintendent has a list of items that he'll be going through.
It's really challenging following Jack. I'll tell you that. No one has ever applauded me at the end of my report. Such a blast. I'm going to quickly go through the first page because most of it was discussed at the last board meeting, and so I just memorialized it here in this written document. So that goes for the levy certification, the adults with disabilities levy, finance, equity revenue, technology issues at the middle school. Mike Starr brought up earlier about the importance of the MSBA Leadership Conference, which is the 16th and 17th of this month at the Minneapolis Convention Center. Please, if you can possibly go, even if you're an experienced board member, we'd love to see you there. I'm planning to be there. It's a great way not only to learn from the sessions, but learn from other board members throughout the state. The School Board Association's legislative platform is attached to the agenda. So feel free to read through that. I know that Rob was a participant in the delegate assembly where a lot of that was discussed, and then an executive committee made the actual platform based on feedback. Also, I have an update about policy 606.5, in terms of when it was recently revised, some of the feedback that I've received. I also met with representatives of the Minnesota Department of Education to answer their questions about the revised policy. I do not have any indication what will happen next, if anything. But I did have that meeting and answered the questions. They've reached out to me, by the way, to have the meeting. The next paragraph, I kind of regret suggesting something because really it's up to the board chair and or the school board to really decide if we should look at potential changes to the policy. But to be forthright, I do recommend considering possible changes based on feedback. We can do that in a number of ways if the board decides to pursue it. It could be a committee meeting, either a special policy committee meeting held fairly soon, or at the first scheduled one in February. We could also discuss it at the board level, again in a special session if we want, or perhaps in conjunction with another board meeting. But I do think we should at least consider potential changes. Discipline data through November is still reflected in the report. I know it's January, so we would typically have December data, but a lot of those data reports are entered at the beginning of the next month. Of course, with the holidays, so I'll include December's data in the next school board packet. And then, as I've been doing in recent agendas, I include a list of the formal challenges of library materials. That's in part to keep the board informed because it's my obligation to do that. And then I have to report it to the state. That's part of the state statute. So I'm just kind of logging everything there, and then I'll do the reporting as appropriate. That's all I have. I owe you one, Chad.
Any questions for the superintendent?
So, Mr. Schmarr, just as far as the MSBA conference, I don't know who plans on going down. We've done the luncheon before, we've not done the luncheon. I don't know, if we come up with a plan now, in an open meeting instead of.
Thank you for bringing that up because Mr. Berger will be recognized for some staff development work or.
Because he completed all the phases of his leadership training.
Right. So he'll be recognized during the recognition luncheon. So it might be of interest to attend that particular meeting. I know we did that a couple of years ago when Amy Kelly was recognized for 20 years of service on the board.
Can you still sign up for the luncheon?
Just let Vanessa know if you have interest. So Nate, you should.
I'd like to attend.
You should probably be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess, does anybody else plan on attending? I plan on going Thursday for sure.
When is that?
The 16th and 17th, so it'll be a Thursday and Friday.
That's in Minneapolis.
Yeah, that's convention center. It's really well attended. It's a pretty good conference. I
That's the
think.
same conference in my
So, in the book, some of you, if you're, now that you're members of the school board, you'll get this sent to you by MSBA if you go onto their website and sign up. But Mr. Starr left this, there is an agenda on here, so you can take a look at it. I am registered and attending both the 16th and the 17th. We'll just go down the line so that way it's public knowledge and answers Mr. Schonach's question. Are you planning on attending? Okay. Do you know what dates?
No, probably both.
Okay. Perfect. Mr. Humphrey?
I have to really look through the schedule.
Absolutely.
Thursday for sure, I'm still up in the air on Friday.
I need to open my schedule.
Ms. Anderson?
Thursday most likely.
And again, I'll leave this on the table for after, so if you want to take a picture of the agenda or look at it, I think it's actually got a QR code as well for the full head. And Mr. Anderson, you said you were planning on it.
And I'm going to a workshop on Wednesday evening about artificial intelligence, so I'm really looking forward to that.
All right, moving forward, next agenda items are action items. We only have one tonight. That is for the acceptance of the FY24 audited financial statements. Ms. Anderson.
Sorry, I have to raise my hand and want to be recognized. I try to follow the process. I have a question for the superintendent.
Go ahead.
So you brought up policy 6065. Have all the emails that we received that are in opposition or support of the policy been provided to new board members? Or any of the documentation that we received from dental lawsuit or anything else been provided to the new board members so they're aware of the standing of this issue?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. They have not been provided that information, but now that they're officially board members, I feel comfortable with updating or providing that information. I'm assuming that all of you would be interested in receiving that information. And so we'll work on providing that. I'm not sure if it'll be one PDF that will be shared or if it'll be a whole bunch of different emails that are forwarded. We'll figure that out. And by the way, that also reminds me that it can be kind of challenging to start because you don't have your computers, you don't have your accounts or email addresses. But I think within 24 hours, everyone should have that information. And so I send that out to your ISD 15 email addresses. And so you'll have all that. And just a reminder, we are obligated to maintain written documentation through the data retention schedule, which is governed or which is expected by state law. And so, make sure that you keep track of all that written communication to and from not only your school email address, but any personal accounts too. But I will forward that information to you in short order. It may not be tomorrow, but sometime this week. Oh, thank you. Yes. Yes. Vanessa reminded me of something really important, and the previous board was really good at this. But if you get a message from anyone, including myself, we encourage people to use the school board email address, and then the email goes to all board members. Please do not reply to all, because it is really easy to violate the open meeting law if we do that and start having a discussion among a quorum of board members. So when you get that, if you so choose, you can respond directly to the person who sent it to you. But please don't reply all, because that can get us into some hot water here.
I think wouldn't that apply to like social media? If you get too many school board members communicating on social media, that could also be an open law violation.
Potentially, yes. Yeah, if there's a discussion taking place, it can happen with personal conversations, like through serial meetings. It's a very complicated issue. I believe phase 1 or phase 2 training will cover that, through the MSBA. But in the meantime, until you can participate in that training, if you don't reply to all, make sure that if there's any discussion of a school board topic, that it does not include a quorum of board members. That's really important too. You can talk up, or there can be communications up to 3 people, but not 4. And there are all sorts of nuances. Thankfully, we have an expert named Brandon Nelson on staff who can help us with that, or at least follow up with, questions of MSBA. Another suggestion, if you have any questions about any school board issue or school district issue, if you're unhappy with me or whatever it could be, the Minnesota School Board Association gives excellent advice. Excellent advice. They do not provide legal advice, which is contingent on specific circumstances, but they're really good at working with school board members. They are hired to provide service to each one of you and to the school district. At the conference, you may meet some MSBA reps, and you might really resonate with 1 or 2 of them. Call them. Find the person you resonate with. The one I call most often, and I think Brandon does the same, is a gentleman named Terry Morrow, but he's not the only person there. It's 1-800-3. Well, I better not say that. I used to have that memorized all the time. But we'll make sure you have that phone number so that you can call them at your convenience.
Mr. Shore.
So you mentioned 606.5. You looking for direction or what?
Yeah, Nate, I don't know if you have a preference, for how it should be handled. But if there are suggestions for potential changes, it'd be helpful if either Nate or I, or maybe it'd be better just to come through me, and then whatever group that's analyzing it could look at the pros and cons of each one of those suggestions, and then we can take it to either the policy committee or the full school board, if we decide to review it again.
Okay, so my comment on that, I'm a stickler on procedure and following procedure. So when we look at this going forward, if there are school board members that would like a policy to have a revision, just like any policy we have, it should go through the committee. We have not set the committee yet. We said that we're going to have it. So once we work through that, that process will work through. Superintendent Anderson is right. If there's changes that board members have input, that should all be funneled through that committee. We'll determine if it's specific to this policy, if it's going directly to the superintendent, and then share it with the committee, or how that's going to work once we set that.
Yeah, and so really none of that was figured out because, I wanted to wait until the board chair was selected. So now we can really hammer that out. But did Nate and or I answer your question, Rob, or?
You did. I was just wondering if you were needing more info from us or if you had what you needed.
I think we'll ask for more feedback from board members, but Nate and I should probably get together and hammer out how we could, look at that feedback or obtain that feedback.
To me, the more important part tonight was that there was an update, that the new board members are provided the opportunity to get any of the information that has come into the district and where we're currently at. And then we'll move forward after the 3 new board members are clear on what's happening here with this. Ms. Anderson.
So just to make sure I understand, the first policy committee that we will have for 2025 is, I think, February 9th. So the very earliest that this topic of discussion would come forward at board meeting would be the end of February, or early March, based on our current timeline.
With the current timeline, that is correct.
Just want to make sure everybody was aware of the time.
Okay, any other questions for the superintendent's administrative report? I'll look this time.
Thanks for bringing up those questions, by the way. It's good to get everything out.
Okay, moving on to the next agenda item, 7.1, acceptance of the FY 2024 audited financial statements. We received the update and the overview by Dee Dee and Aaron. This same report, the financial statements have already been sent to MDE as required. We met that suspense. Are there any further questions prior to a motion? Seeing none, is there a call to motion to accept the audited financial statements from FY 24 as presented?
So waited.
Mr. Schoenrock, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Wes, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the current motion to accept as presented the audited financial statements for FY 2024, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, signify by saying nay. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Next item is agenda item 8, upcoming meetings and preliminary topics. This aligns with the already approved meeting dates and lists current agenda items. These items are specific, currently what's listed on there are specific to district operations, and other items will be added based on board input. As a new board chair, I will relook at all of this with the superintendent and get feedback from all of you if there's any changes required to those preliminary topics as we move forward. Are there any questions or comments about the upcoming meetings or topics?
If I could note that district cabinet members and I reviewed those topics today, and so we'll have some suggested changes in terms of timing, not adding topics necessarily, but just when they'll be presented. So, but Mr. Berg and I can review those together.
Any other questions or comments? Just so you guys are aware, I'm looking at adding a 1-hour work session to our next meeting, the 27th. That will be specifically to review school board member handbook as a group. So I'm working on a draft handbook with input from MSBA and other districts, but we will look at that. It would be a work session prior to the official meeting to discuss the school board member handbook. I do not have a timeline for approval of that process, but I want to start that process as a team, looking forward at what that handbook would look like. I will also send out the draft document of that prior to, so you have time to look at it and write your comments. I have not set a date on when that will be sent out yet, but we'll have it prior to that meeting if we move forward with that. Mr. Schoenrock.
So if you're doing that, there is new board member orientation, that meeting as well, 5 to 6. So you need to coordinate.
Yeah, we will work through that process and let all of you know what that comes up prior to. All right, moving forward to the next agenda item, school board member report. Member Anderson.
I'm not going to.
Member Schoenrock.
What's going on? Just with all these new faces on the board table, I think it would be nice to have some sort of, just like a meal or a gathering, open meeting, whatever it is, you can do it before or whatever, if that's a possibility. to just get to know one another. Just throwing that out there, not throwing a date out, just if it's a possibility, something we can do to get to know each other. And then I did write down here the school board handbook, so just brought that up, so thank you. Other than that, I don't really have anything to report.
Thank you. Member West?
Welcome to all our new school board members. Great to have you on board. I wish you a lot of luck and Godspeed as you go through 4 years. That's all I have.
Member Humphrey?
I'd like to thank you for allowing 5 minutes for the consideration of visitors. I believe that caring for my constituency is one of the most important things that a school board member can do, so I really appreciate that. Other than that, yeah, welcome Andy, welcome Chad, and everyone else. Look forward to working with you again, and appreciate the support. And remember, this is going to be fun and not fun all at the same time. It's probably, I don't know, maybe it'll be good. So doing good by these kids is what we're looking forward. We all bring, I'm grateful that we have such a different variety of inputs to cover all our bases and come up with the greatest path forward. So look forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you. Member Hanson?
Thank you.
Member Working?
No, I'm just grateful to be here. Appreciate everybody's support up until this point, and looking forward to the process and helping improve the overall educational outcome for our kids, not just here.
I had on my report just the MSBA conference. We already hit that. I hope to see many of you there. That'd be great. And then just a comment about please be responsive in the next week to 2 weeks as I work through the committee assignments and helping me with your input. I do value the input of all of you, so I want to make sure we get this right and we do the best for the district when it comes to participation in all of these committees. And then again, thank you for the vote of confidence for board chair. I'm excited to work together as a team. I think we can be a very beneficial team for our district because we all know what that one purpose is and where we're going for that. So thank you for that. With that, the final item for tonight is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So,
Mr. Troy, is there a second? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All right, we are adjourned at 8:55 p.m.
no.